Hello, this is Beastly Eel, and on today's episode, we're talking about What If. Episode 4 aired today, and this episode was called What If Doctor Strange Lost His Heart Instead of His Hands. As always, I talk about the episode as a whole and then talk about what I think would happen after. Um, this episode, for those of you who haven't seen it, which I hope you have seen it, was a tough one to watch. It was definitely not tough in the sense of like it was bad. It was so well done and definitely hit on the heartstrings in my personal opinion. I felt very depressed after. Um, yeah, not a good feeling episode for sure. So anyway, in this particular episode, it starts off very similar to the original Doctor Strange movie. The difference being that Doctor Strange isn't driving alone; he's driving with his girlfriend, who's played by Rachel McAdams, and for the life of me, I cannot think of her character's name, and it's gonna bother me. But anyway, so she gets in the vehicle with him, and the car crashes, and his hands are fine, but Rachel dies. Um, she dies next to him, which is kind of sad. Um, and this is where it's slightly different, but still pretty close to the same Doctor Strange movie. Is where Doctor Strange himself is so lost and defeated and trying to find other ways to bring her back. Takes him all over the world, just like the movie, and this is where he learns um, magic. So he then trains with the Ancient One, and he learns everything he needs to, and pretty much everything now is pretty much exactly the same as the Doctor Strange movie, obviously minus his girlfriend being involved, but it seems to be exactly the same because he faces Dormammu, beats Dormammu, the Ancient One dies. He uses the Time Stone to, or the Eye, um, whatever. But he uses the Time Stone to mess with um, Dormammu, who then leaves Earth alone, or leaves the dimension alone, I should say. And it ends, or so we think, right? And then he sits with Wong and basically talks about what life could have been. And Wong sees what he's doing, and he basically tells Strange, "Don't do it. You know, do come with me before you do something incredibly foolish." Well, he goes back in time, and he tries to change what happens, but every time he changes something, she dies in a different way. She dies from a car crash. She dies from another car crash. She dies from a heart attack. She dies from a shooting. She dies in a house fire. Every single way, it seems that she dies. And it's definitely really messing with him. You can see him just getting sadder and sadder and sadder. And this is where the Ancient One comes in, and she explained to him that this is a point in time that's needed in this universe, that there's no other way. This is inevitable. She has to die because without her death, he would have never learned the arts. He would have never learned the ancient arts, which is where he wouldn't have become the Sorcerer Supreme, and Dormammu would have taken over and everything else. She's trying to explain that to him, and he doesn't accept it. He knows that there's a way in his mind that can stop this particular point in time from happening. He goes to use the Time Stone. She hits him with an energy blast, but he still teleports out of there. What we find is he teleports, we're not quite sure when in time. I'm guessing back in time to where this ancient um, library was. And he meets this guy, and we don't really. I feel like we should know who he is, but I don't know who he is. But anyway, he starts going through all the books in the library and realizes that the only way to stop a specific point in time from happening, he needs more power. And the only way to get more power is to absorb other creatures. So he tries to do it with this tentacle monster, and he gets his butt kicked. And he gets knocked out, and the guy who's head of the library basically says to him, "It's not, is this girl really worth it?" And he says, "You have no idea. Of course she is." And he's basically explaining to him that it will cost the entire world. And he's like, "That's a risk I'm willing to take." And he continues on. So he starts absorbing more and more creatures, weaker ones to start off with, and continues to try to absorb all the creatures. And he starts to take some of their abilities as well, but he forces it down. As this continues, he finally absorbs the tentacle creature that he fought in the very beginning, and was able to do so with ease. As this goes on, apparently this has been centuries going on, because we see the same guy who was the keeper of the library, ancient now, and explaining to Doctor Strange that he doesn't have the power because he's not a whole person. Half of him is missing, and Doctor Strange isn't quite sure what's happening or what he's talking about. And apparently, what had happened was when the Ancient One shot the blast at Doctor Strange, she split time. She caused a rift that made two Doctor Strange. One who went back in time to try to learn a way to get her back, and the other one who never went back in time at all, who stayed at the regular time frame because he realized that it was inevitable. And now Doctor Strange, the good one, is noticing that reality is breaking before his eyes, and an aspiration of the Ancient One comes to see him to explain what's going on. And apparently that he himself is the reason for it, and he's very confused by it. So he goes to see Wong, who is disappearing slowly, and he gives him a protection spell to kind of help him fight himself. After he puts it on, there's a red ring that goes around him, and Doctor Strange is like, "Oh, this isn't good," and Wong's like, "No, no, it's not." And he gets sucked in, and he gets teleported to where the evil Doctor Strange is. And this is where the two of them fight. And this is actually a very good fight. Although the fight doesn't happen right away. He tries to absorb him right away, and it doesn't work because of the protection spell. And then he explains to Doctor Strange that nobody understood. Nobody understands her more than we do. So they fight a little bit, and then they kind of go into this ball of energy, I guess. And in this, the evil Doctor Strange is trying to convince the good Doctor Strange that it's worth bringing her back, and he realizes it's not. As much as he liked her, as much as he loved her, it needed to be done for the entire world to be protected. And as painful as it is for him, he realizes that. And he tries to explain it to his other self, and he's not having it. They get into a huge fight. They go back in time to the accident, and they fight, and it is a brutal fight. A lot of hits exchanged. It's actually a beautifully done scene, fight scene, in my opinion. Um, Eventually, the evil Doctor Strange beats Doctor Strange, hits him hard enough and enough times to knock the protection spell off of him, and because of that, he's able to absorb Doctor Strange. And he has enough power to stop the event from happening and brings back Rachel. The issue being, when he brings back Rachel, he's in this kind of deformed look of all the creatures combined. And when she sees him, she's terrified of him. And she realizes she starts to disappear. And he goes, "No, no, no, I'll fix it, I'll fix it, I'll fix it." And what happens is reality upon itself and that entire universe starts to get compacted in. And he's not having it. And he uses every amount of his energy to try to stop it. And he is powerful enough that he actually notices the Watcher, and he's begging the Watcher for help. And the Watcher goes, "No, even if there was something I could do, I'm not going to do it because I'd be doing nothing more than what you would do, and I'm better than that." And he leaves. And Doctor Strange gets put into this tiny, itty bitty little crystal where he watches the love of his life disappear from existence again. And he's stuck alone, forever to exist in a compact world where everything is nothing, and he caused it himself. That's the end of the episode. Oh my God. It was so sad and so depressing. Overall, great episode. The one thing I have to say is the Watcher, this is the first time the Watcher actually interacts with one of the people in the episode. I find that to be very, very powerful because it also shows how strong Doctor Strange is at that time. Yes, I understand that it was because he was absorbing all those creatures, but Doctor Strange continued to get stronger and was able to notice basically the Watcher. And I wonder if this timeline, granted does not exist anymore because it's just a floating ball crystal, if we see this particular Doctor Strange in the multiverse, in the madness of the multiverse, because this would be a Doctor Strange that would be really tough and also a great villain to introduce. You know, just himself, having the battle himself would be awesome. But yeah, there's normally I would talk about where the series, like where the timeline would have gone, but because of his actions, the timeline does not exist, which means all of reality in that entire universe was destroyed because of his actions. So there was nothing to expand upon. But yeah, definitely a good episode. I definitely recommend it. If you have not watched What If at all, please watch it now. Um, as always, if you like the content you see, please like and subscribe below. And if you have something you'd like to comment or talk about this episode, please mention it in the comments. I'm always happy to talk with everybody. Other than that, this is Beastly Eel signing out. Have a good night.